Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights, our director discussion show here on the Nerd Party Network. This week, we're continuing The House of Jones with Spike Jonze' third film, Where the Wild Things Are, from 2009. With 5 times his normal budget and extensive exterior shots, will this film capture the wonder of the 1963 children's book? Only the marketing team and test audience will tell. I'm Darren Motion Tracker Moser, and I'm joined again by my friends, giant twig structure architect John Mills and child trauma specialist Tristan Riddell.
Ooh, that feels right.
Where our fantasy sailing ship take us on this edition of Houselights. This movie, we often have this question at the very beginning of have you seen it before? And I'm really glad that we have some of us that have and some of us that haven't, because being 09, being 16 years ago, the special effects, the where we were in our lives, this is definitely one of those movies, I think, that if you watch when it came out versus watching with kids versus watching when you're older, I think we'll have a play in that, and we'll find out. So, John, I'm going to pick on you first. So this was your first time watching Where the Wild Things Are. Did you know of the book? Did you have the Newbery Award winning copy or whichever? Right. I'm sure it had one of those awards.
It is not something that I grew up with. I was aware of the book. I'd read it before, and by the time I read it, it was like, okay. Just like, everybody's always like, they go on about Disney, and I'm like, I wasn't a Disney family either. So like people like wax nostalgic about like old school Disney. And I'm like, yeah, it existed. Sure.
Right.
So I wasn't terribly familiar with the book. I was familiar enough. I worked in a toy store where we sold it as well. So you would leaf through it during slow times. Sometimes it's like, oh, that's cool artwork. But when this came out, I wanted to see it. I was just too busy at the time because I had 2 very young children at the time. And so it just wasn't in the cards. And as I recall, like there was a good marketing push. There was a huge nostalgia wave going along with it. A lot of people were very stoked for it. And I was excited because I was like, oh, this looks like something really like a fresh take on something from Spike Jonze, whose previous 2 movies I at least enjoyed. And so it's like, okay, I'll give a crack at this, but I just never got around to it till now. So yay, podcast homework.
Exactly. Well, and this will be interesting when we get on to the visuals, because as much nostalgia can be attached to this book, it's 13 sentences, and he somehow drafted that into a 100+ page, story treatment. But Tristan, you saw this in theaters, or was it a rental?
I didn't see this in theaters. I did see it when it came to video.
Okay.
Pretty much as soon as it came out, I saw this on video. I had my best man at my wedding. He was all about this movie. He was singing its praises, and also screaming it. And so he's like, you have to watch this, because he was ashamed of me for not seeing it in theater. And so as soon as it came out on video, he's like, go rent it, go get it right now. And I did. And I have not seen it since. So last time I saw it was in 09 or 10 or whenever it came out on video.
Yeah, well, to round out our trifecta, I saw this in theaters. I remember the trailer coming up, and again, it's a children's book made into a movie. We were just waxing about Harold and Purple Crayon, and there's certain, only nostalgia can only go so far. Like, it is a children's book. It is a small thing. You are extrapolating out. Or I think of the Polar Express, maybe another good example of a book that is very short, and they are able to stretch it out through various song and dance, because otherwise it would be 15 minutes long. So with this one, while its core is the story of Max and it hits all the main beats, we get the main lines and all of that. For this movie, I really wanted to see it for the creature work, for the visuals, and jumping into that aspect, this was made. The creatures were made by Jim Henson Creature Shop, and we were talking about '09 a second ago. And apparently in The Hangover, they also did the tiger. That was I don't know if I've never seen The Hangover, so I'm assuming it's in a car or somewhere and pops up, and so they did the creature work for that as well. But in this one, I think we could all place bets that if they were making it today, it would be 100% CGI and probably suffer for it. But for this one, they had full body creature effects, and then they did post-processing with visual effects on the faces and eyes to push around the pixels and, add blinking and lines of sight and try to pull a performance out of a still face. So John, when you first saw this, did that hold up for something that is 16 years old? Did you kind of start to see the squash and stretch and it looked like Photoshop had kind of been pulled in a little bit? Because I noticed that a little more this viewing than I did back in '09. But how did it come across? Did you feel captured in that real world?
I think that on the whole, the work on the faces is incredibly strong and holds up, because there's something to be said for subtlety. And I think there was some subtlety at play. I think that there are certain things where the lighting helps it as well. There are inevitably on any show, there's going to be something where it doesn't quite hit the mark. And so, yeah, there are a couple of times where it just doesn't move the way it's supposed to, quote unquote. But on the whole, yeah, I think that the face work was great. I think that the idea to keep them all practical suits was great because it gave them the opportunity to focus on the face work. Had they done these particular creatures fully CG, there's no way you would have gotten the breeze blowing the fringes of the fur, right? Especially
from 10 feet away, they look real.
Yeah, it never, ever, ever would have worked because of that fringy feel on the side. And I think that, Jones showed in his previous two movies that he knows how to handle special effects. So I would be confident if somebody came to me and they said, "Oh, this is what Spike Jonze wants to do," I would actually be confident. I'd say, "Oh, okay. Well, I know he's a likely one to pull this off." I wonder, actually, it probably goes back to his video days, because they would put in
music video and such.
Yeah, music videos, they would put in those types of special effects. So he probably had a very good sense of what the camera could do in conjunction with. But I think it holds up very, very well. In terms of some of the stuff that doesn't hold up as well, sometimes I wonder when I watch stuff on, the TV that I have or that anybody has, I think there's something to be said for when it's presented in the big theater. I think that they designed the effects for that format. And I really think that shrinking it down there, no matter how good you remaster it, it's not going to look as good as its intended format. Like I can look at a beautiful painting, like a Renaissance painting, but if I shrink it down to my TV screen by one of the Dutch masters, it's never going to look quite the same. There's so much that goes into the larger presentation, and shrinking it down, I just think that there's no way you can't expose some of the flaws you would normally miss.
Well, and this is a movie, so Tristan, talking about the kind of the cinematography of it for a moment, it does not shy away from wide shots, from expansive, our characters are tiny in the frames at times, but it's this wild edge of fantasy world where it's a forest and there's creatures and stuff, but like it visually, does this fit this kind of, I don't want to say uncanny valley, but it's right there in the middle of, you feel the fantasy of it, but it's so rooted in the trees and the dirt and the rocks and the sand and the water, where it feels real. Did this visually, and with the cinematography kind of take you on that journey? Did you feel taken?
I think the cinematography was best suited for the story that he wanted to tell. I think this is definitely a Spike Jonze film. and it looks like it. It feels like it. I think that it was nice to see that the visual language of the movie was incredibly different from adaptation and being John Malkovich, but you could still tell it's a Spike Jonze film. But I think that's I think that shows his confidence as a director, where he can mess around with the style while still having his imprint on it. And so I feel like, you know, I love the mixture of the forest and the desert and the island scenes and things like that, where it's all like beaches and whatnot. It felt really mythical in where they just all of a sudden they were surrounded by dunes. And I think if you're going to showcase that kind of landscape, you have to shoot the landscape. And so you need wide shots. And I think it would be a disservice just to show close-ups or even mediums when you're trying to have this expansive world within worlds.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, you were stating that this feels like a Spike Jonze movie. You see his fingerprints on it. John, with the story, with the treatment of pulling these 13 sentences out, how did you feel when first watching it for the real world part and the framing, you know, the beginning and the end with the mom and, you know, I think I've heard a lot of people remark on this movie of, oh, this really captured the feeling of childhood. And I'm like, maybe some people's childhood, I don't know if necessarily my childhood, but how did those framing devices, literally the beginning and the end, kind of work for you or not?
They didn't work for me, honestly. There's definitely a layer of, you can, even though it never outwardly states it, there's a very Gen X feel to this kid's childhood. That sort of mythical, more feral lifestyle that we supposedly all had in Gen X. And it's like, I'm a Gen Xer. Trust me, guys. They make so much of it. Like anyway. I think that the movie started off very much on the wrong foot with me, really on the wrong foot with me, by starting with the way he was chasing the dog around, because that
turned me off immediately.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I'm not alone, because the way he manhandles that dog, two things. One, that's abuse of that dog. And two, no dog on the face of the planet, no matter how much that dog loves their owner, that dog is going to eat his face, because it was just obscene the way that, and I know that seems silly to fixate on, but I really fixated on it to the point where I was trying to dissociate, to the point where I saw him running and he had a fork in his hand. And I'm like, you keep running around with a fork in your hand, jumping down the steps? What? Well, like it went too far with him. It went too far.
To be fair, in the book, the opening scene, he's running down the stairs, chasing a dog, holding a fork. And so that's why they put that in there. But I understand that they did the homage, that they're saying like, oh yeah, this is like the book. But there are different ways to show wrestling with your dog. Mm-hmm. And this was not wrestling with your dog. This was abusing your dog. Mm-hmm. And so from that moment on, I didn't give a crap about Max. I was just like, oh, okay, you know, he deserves whatever's coming to him. But then again, you know, like Jonze was able to bring me back in, like when his igloo was smashed and everything like that. Yeah. He starts crying. You feel that. You feel that intensely. But then when he lashes out, you're just like, oh, that's right. That's the psycho. You know, that's the psychotic break.
No, yes, but see that, you know, I really want to go to that too, because this is one of those things where the delicate line you have to walk is Max is supposed to be wild, but sympathetic. There you go. He's not sympathetic. Do I feel bad for the kid that his igloo gets smashed? Yes. But then that is framed by things where I feel no sympathy for him, because he's actually being cruel. And it's like, I honestly, from that very first opening, I just couldn't connect. Mm-hmm. I didn't allow myself to connect. And I think it's a miscalculation from Jonze.
No, I agree. The igloo scene, I think, is the most powerful moment, and it's acted superbly. Like, you feel like the look on his face and the sound he makes when he's like kind of suffocating, you're like, oh, we've all been there when we overestimated the fun and it bit us. And then they're building that into, him and his sister and that relationship. So that moment was great. The whole opening framing could have been half the time. I mean, we're trying to stretch this movie, but yeah, as far as the sympatheticness of the main character, it's almost like we made a movie about Sid from Toy Story and we really want you to care about him. No, you don't.
That's a great pull, man.
He's
That's
the
a great
jerk
pull.
next door. Like I would never we see him in a shot in Toy Story 3 and he's grown up in a garbage man. And you're like, that's all I need of him. I don't need to see that character again. I know what kind of person he is. So yeah, I think for me, I felt the same, a bit of disconnection from Max, but I do appreciate what they are trying to set up because I won't go so far as saying they need that setup to make the island parts pay off, but you do see them interweave the way he's talking to the wild things and the rawness of emotion and conflict and doubt and fear. Like it very much is tied into things that Max is going through. Could that have been better in the first act? Probably. But let's get to the wild things. And we have an amazing voice cast in this. And I mean, it's so fun. One of my favorite things in Houselights as we go through a director's series is seeing when actors continually pop up and you're like, oh, I know why they work together now, because they worked on that and they worked on that and they know they could handle this. So James Gandolfini, oh my gosh, as Carol, the lead wild thing, every word he said, I was captivated. He delivered it all the wild things talk in this simplistic kind of childish way. And it's almost kind of unnerving because it's like it's like kids in adults' bodies. Like there's something off about it that you can't quite put your finger on. So his part coming through. We have, Chris Cooper as Douglas the cockatoo. I almost a standout character. Like every moment he was on screen, I'm like, more Douglas, and then he loses his arm. But what to you, Tristan? Did you have a favorite voice cast?
Oh,
apparently they were romping around as Forrest Whitaker. Yes.
Forrest Whitaker is
Yes.
I freaking love Forrest Whitaker in everything he does. And there was a moment where I lost it. He's like, "Hi, I'm Ira. I make the holes in the trees. You might have seen him." Like just that tail end, that trail off of, you might have seen him. Like it's just like,
right.
Like, do you know my work? Like it's
like
it's
he's
so,
handing you a business card.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, Catherine O'Hara, really, really brought it. Like she understood what she needed to do and she did it. And you can also really tell that they were all filmed together. Like the voice cast was filmed. It was recorded like a Fantastic Mr. Fox with Wes Anderson, where that cast was together acting it out. And so that way you could get that energy of them together. So they all went to some park and actually did a mud fight while they were being recorded.
Yeah, no, you definitely feel that. It doesn't feel like all the behind the scenes of Pixar movies where they're all in the booth and they're got one hand on the earpiece. It had a vibrancy to it. Honestly, I will admit, Judith, the three-horned lion, she scares me. She's like the one that creature design. I don't know, something about it and the way she talks. I'm like, she is gonna rip your face off. Like she could maybe in a moment. Like I don't know. I would stay, if I was on the island, I would stay as far away from her as I could. But John, what wild thing, either performance or scare factor, got under your skin?
I'll be honest. It's because of that opening. I can give credit to the cast. I acknowledge, I'll just go ahead and say it. Like basically when you come to me it's essentially going to be, this is a film that is full of great technique in search of film to match it. And I think that as a result, I only looked at these creatures as effects reel creatures.
Okay.
The voice work became secondary as a result. I agree, Gandolfini's great. I can listen to each of them and I can say they did good. They do thing well, is effective. But it suppressed my reaction to any of them. Like like there was a part of me where it was like, oh, I wanted to love Chris Cooper's performance, but I had backed away so hard. So by default, I'll go ahead and give Chris Cooper the prize there.
Okay. Are you saying you felt like the voice acting versus the suit acting felt kind of disjointed? Like it almost felt like you could feel the two people creating the character? Or you just feel Max kind of spoiled it from the get-go and you were trying to dig out of a hole from Act 2?
Yes. And so I looked at it purely from a technical standpoint. So from a technical standpoint, yeah, I think that the way that Jones records them and the type of performances they gave brought the suits alive in that final way that they needed to. Like everything came together. And I think that it can't be overstated how important those voice performances were to the creature working in the first place. Like, since we know it was, Henson's workshop that put it together, it's one of those things where, Big Bird doesn't work without Big Bird's voice. It's that type of subtlety to it. And I think that Jones understood that you needed that person to believe that they were that character. And so I guess that's the praise that I'll give the voice acting is it didn't feel like they were voice acting. It felt like they were performing a role. And that's the important distinction.
Yeah, you had a group of very talented, award-winning actors delivering a very nuanced voice performance. And that got paired with like the best of the best creature works. And, unfortunately, I think we're all kind of consensusing that unfortunately was bookended in a sour taste. But once we're on the island, we can appreciate that. But it does have to live within the wrapper of the framing device we got.
The highest praise I could give the creature and voice work is the only other thing that springs to mind where it blended this well, and specifically, puppetry, creature work, and CG and voice work, was the Dark Crystal series that Netflix only gave us one season of, which is an absolute, if you haven't watched it, everybody go watch it. It's an absolute masterwork. This is approaching that level though. So that's the highest praise I can give it.
All right. Tristan, what were your thoughts on the, like we were saying about the rapper and the voice work and all that? You sounded like you had something.
Oh, I did have something to say. It's just because we were talking about the bookends and everything like that. And there were things I liked and things I didn't, but Darren, like you talked about, where one thing I did appreciate was the struggles that he went through were mirrored on the island. And I think that was done very well from a storytelling standpoint. That was done very well because you can track his growth from that perspective. Like you're like, oh, he's interacting with Carol the way that he interacted with this, or he's interacting with Judith, or Judith is interacting with him the way that he interacted with them, like that kind of thing. And so you need that.
Wouldn't be as impactful without the symmetry.
Right. You need the arc. You need something to grow off of, I think. And that did this very well. And there's one scene that I think was done perfectly at the beginning. Like I have my struggles with everything in the real world, almost everything. But one thing that I think that was done very well was that scene where Catherine Keener's on the phone, and she's working at her computer, and Max is like doing the robot, around her, like trying to make her laugh, and then falls to the ground, and he starts playing with her pantyhose on her toes, and just kind of like pulling it a little bit. It was such a real moment. It was such a great encapsulation of childhood and being that young and loving your mother and just wanting to be around her. And then like you see that reciprocal love that they show that she's not, there's
not
no
a monster.
There's no justification.
She's not distant.
Right. She's not distant. She's there. She even like types up his stories, and you can tell that they've done it 100 times before.
Yeah.
And it's her way of, still being able to work, but yet still interacting with him at the same time. And so that I thought was beautifully crafted, which makes it even more impactful for him to be a monster and act out because, yes, he has a single parent home, but she's not, she's not
spinning all the plates. She's trying to keep it all.
She's spinning all the places. She's doing what she can.
No, I agree. And I mean,
and how useless was that boyfriend as Mark Ruffalo? Like when he pops in, he's like, "You can't let her treat you like that." I was like, way to contribute to the conversation, Mark.
Yeah, good job. Well, I'm thinking back to the island and how it's so funny. I feel like sometimes, especially with effects-heavy movies, directors will be so excited with, I can put the camera everywhere, that they put the camera where they shouldn't. And I love how pretty much every single shot is on the ground, eye level. Like it feels like a documentary crew is following Max around. Everything is even when they're far away, like our camera is on the ground. And that made it feel very real, where you didn't know what was around the corner. You didn't know, sometimes like they're building the big, fort, and you only see part of it because it's so big, it's not even in frame. And I love how I didn't pick it up the first time watching this, that when he's sketching it out and the foot is there, so he draws around it, and they actually build the little tower with a hook in it, just like the blueprint, because they did that. That's how he drew it. So that's how they built it. And I was like, I didn't even catch that. But I love the, for lack of a better classification, the childlike rambleness of the story. Meaning, and Max even does this with his mom, this movie has this flow of, and then this happened. Like, it's like a child is telling it to you of, okay, we're going to go play a dirt clod war, and these are the rules, and you're going to go over here. Like, and you notice when you see a child's movie where they say that there's no pronouns. Every time they talk to another character, it's the full name. It's kind of a simplistic way of, that's why they're so memorable. We can remember everyone's name. But all that to say, I loved that kind of rambling aspect of it. Felt like I was watching a movie, but instead Max was sitting next to me just telling me about his adventure. And it was of that kind of not polished first draft free flow of a story coming out. I felt like the whole movie was like that. Not incomprehensible, but it had a different flow, I think, that he was going for it. So John, you said you didn't catch this in theaters. You had very young children. One of the things that kind of came about with this movie coming out was its reception and marketing. It sounded like they purposely were not trying to market it as a kid's film. And they kind of were aware up front of like, oh, this movie's a little darker. It's a little scary. It's a little unsettling at times. Like, they're wild things. They feel wild. Like, you're not quite sure what they're going to do. So all that to say, how the heck would you market this movie? Because I don't think they figured it quite out.
I mean, I would just lean straight into the nostalgia aspect and make it clear that it's like, listen, this is a film for how you remember childhood or something like that. I think that would get plenty of people in.
Firmly young adult, not kid.
Well, by that point, it is established parent sort of thing. But like, I mean, because some of the criticism I agree with, where, basically they're like, they say, what can a kid hang on to here? Like one of the critics that's cited on Wikipedia talks about, this is a film full of adult ideas about childhood. So it's very much somebody who's growing older looking back and saying, oh, I remember, let us ponder this thing that I tossed aside as a child. And it's like, that I think is what makes it incredibly difficult to access, because I know I go into it and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm familiar with the source material. This is going to be something that's designed to sort of tap into that child that's in me that's still asking those questions. And sort of the beauty of those types of movies like Up from Pixar, the stronger Pixar work is that it unlocks it in adults and kids, because kids are asking the questions that the Pixar movies were asking. And inside all of us, I'm not saying anything revolutionary here, but there's still that little child that's still afraid and like looking around and asking those questions every day. And it's just, we have a whole ton of experience put on top of it now. Maybe a rheumatic ankle that acts up every so often, but like it is, I think that this is a movie that cuts itself off because of that. And so I think the only way you could have successfully marketed this would to be like, look, this is for older people. This isn't for your kids. This is for you to look back on what it was like. Have the kids stay at a sitter maybe, or something like that. That's my take.
It's almost like the story came about not from the book, but someone wrote a psych paper on the effects of this, children's story, and then they turned that into a movie. And like you were saying, John, of, when Pixar is at its best, you have that kind of dual story of the surface layer story the kids get, the characters, the fun, or maybe songs, but there's so many things we as adults see and can appreciate. This is like all of the latter and none of the former. Like you said, I mean, I think you summed it up of what can a kid connect with in this, except for maybe they also too had their igloo smashed and they also were sad about that. But what did you think of that aspect, Tristan? Like, I think we have a consensus of, for visually telling where the wild things are, this movie knocked it out of the park. For translating this book into something that people want to see, it's a hit or miss.
Yeah, this is an extremely difficult film to market, and especially because of the direction that Jones took. And Jones fought super hard to keep this type of direction. And the studio, I think, threatened at one time to reshoot the entire 75 million and be like, nope, we're not releasing this. We're doing this over. Like, that's how bad it went. And so Jones had to go back and say, like, okay, well, I'll change this and this, but it keeps the tone. And so I don't even want to know what was in Jones's first draft.
The dark version. What was that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Did the sister die in a car crash and that was the last time he ever saw her, is when he smashed the heart? I don't know. Maybe.
Oh man, that's crazy that's what you pulled out, because I feel like that's something that could have happened. But John, I think you really nailed it about how, like, if you look at a Pixar film, which is funny because Lasseter is actually mentioned in this movie, like when she says, like, what did Mr. Lasseter not like about the presentation or the report or something like that? It's because Lasseter tried to get this off the ground. And
that's funny.
Mixing animation styles, and I think it died in the 90s at Disney. And it's just like, John, with what you said about how there are Pixar movies that can open up childhood, that kids who are currently going through it and adults can reminisce about it. This is not one of those movies. And I think you nailed it, where, like, this is an adult view of what they thought childhood was like. And, my view of what childhood was like is a heck of a lot different than what it actually was, because I got almost 40 years of baggage on it that comes with it. And some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's in the middle, but it's, you're dealing with a lot of shame and nostalgia at the same time. And so, yeah, this one, it's because it's a kid's book and that your protagonist is a kid, but yet I wouldn't show this to my kids, not because I don't think they can handle it, but just because I think they'd be bored to tears.
I agree on that count. I know my kids would have been like, what? They wouldn't have made it through the whole thing. Not a chance.
And I think I know that we're talking about the marketing, but I think that's my biggest thing with this movie, is that I was like, yeah, the voice acting is fantastic. The creature effects are top notch for the time. I think they even hold up today. I really do. And the cinematography, The production design is all on point. It's just, I feel like Jones relied too heavily on his music video roots. And you have 30 minutes of content here.
Yeah.
Stretched to an hour 40, hour
41.
50, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, since you mentioned the music video roots, I will say that something that caused chills to run up and down my spine was actually the hipster music sort of thing. Like,
oh, that's true. The soundtrack is a thing.
Honestly grated on me. That whole like ethereal female voice over like the little whoo, like that sort of thing. If you don't absolutely wrap that right in a movie, I'm going to react violently to it. Like not in a literal physical sense, but like internally, I start to hate it because
he was dating Karen O at the time.
That's fine. That's fine.
I'm
good for
saying. That's why it's there.
I know. Good for him. Whatever. But like, it's one of those things where it's like, it just rankles because it feels so, lack of a better term, it feels so manipulative because the whole genre of music that sounds like that is about trying to wistfully manipulate you into feeling a certain way. And I don't know. I think I might have like there's something with like oppositional defiant disorder. And when I hear music like that, it's triggered. And I'm like, no, screw you. Stop it. You're trying to manipulate me.
Yeah, no, I agree. There were parts with the music where, I mean, at least it's consistent throughout the whole thing. Like it is very much a tone. But yeah, this is kind of the type of movie you need to kind of buckle up and just really seep into the nuance. And that is not a kid thing. They are not built for that. Maybe instead of focusing on, I mean, I know it's the wildness of Max, but maybe instead focus on his imagination and his creativity. He's obviously a very bright boy, very like, if the kid needs a notebook. If he had a notebook that he was constantly drawing the wild things in and making up little stories, and then he goes there and we take 5 minutes and then we're there because he wants to hide away after having a bad day. Great. Like, I think that would have, carried us off right away.
Or even in all honesty, as much of a trope as it is, have him be a kid that's not bad, but like you could, the parent overreacts where it's like, would you just calm down for once in your life? Like, and
right.
It hurts the kid's heart. So he goes off and retreats to that spot and then like goes off and sort of like comes to an understanding that, sometimes mom and dad, they're people too. And they overreact. And then he comes back and he's like, hey, I figured it out. Like, I don't know, but that's just a whole different film.
Yeah. I mean, the kid has to be wild because, he has to be sent to his room without dinner kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the premise.
But he has to be wild in a Calvin and Hobbes sense where it's harmless wild, where you can understand how mom and dad get flustered at times, but at the same time, when when dad yells at him, you're like, come on, he's just being a kid. Like you gotta sympathize with him. I know I'm coming back to that again, where it's like I think it is. It's just I don't know why. Maybe it is just that the people making the movie forgot how subtle that sort of distinction is of being a wild kid without being Max is not a good kid. It's not like, oh, come on, take it easy on him. I'm like, no, that kid really needs some like professional help, man. And I shouldn't feel that way about him. I should want to go on a journey with him. I don't want to spend any time with him. So I don't know.
Yeah. And they try. You can feel them trying to make that connection. But you're right. It needs to be more of I had something planned today. Or heck, look at Hook. The kids want their dad's attention. They want him to be at the ball game. They want him to be now, obviously it's more on the dad and he's missing things. And it's just the timing and the priorities are out of whack. But but the dad isn't bad. The kids aren't bad. It's a circumstantial problem that they have to just overcome. This kid needs some therapy, but
I will say about Hook, when that kid is throwing the baseball
Yeah.
in the airplane,
Yeah, on the window. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're not wrong there. And then it's hard enough for the airbags to deploy from the ceiling.
like the way that Spielberg did that scene
Look,
was just
it's
like
fine. It totally won't break. He's like smashing it against the window.
he's just like it's like kids, not kids. I'd throw that kid out the airlock.
Yeah, you know,
If it didn't involve opening up the door.
Yeah,
I at least strap that kid down. Yeah. Meh.
No,
I think that was that's a big, like, okay, speaking of which, that's a big hurdle for me, especially with this film. And we've talked about it several times, but I don't like child protagonists. I really don't. I have such a struggle with child protagonists because I'm like my mother. I have children. I love my children. I don't like children. And it's so funny because I like children more than my mother did and does. And I was one time, talking with my wife, and she's like, "Your mom doesn't like kids, does she?" I was like, "Oh no, she doesn't." I was like, "Did you feel like you had a good childhood?" I was like, "I had a fantastic childhood. I don't know how, but I did."
No, my parents were the same way.
There's a difference between when your kid and not.
Yeah, my parents were the same way, and I'm this way too. Like when you're part of the tribe, all rules are very different. And then once you go outside that circle, it's like, that kid's a jerk. I don't want you hanging out with that kid. It's like, oh, come on, you just got to be friends with the kid. No, that kid's no, I don't like that kid. I don't like that kid.
And so I have that mentality. And so like coming into it right off the bat and seeing that intro, you're just like, whew, okay, this is going to be a struggle. And
Buckle up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is that like, I hate that I had to rely on the technical aspects of the movie in order to enjoy my film viewing experience. And my biggest complaint, and I keep coming back to it because I know that we're getting close, but my biggest complaint is
get on the sailboat.
Yeah, is the structure. It's just there's just nothing there. Like you have some really cool moments between the characters, like how he interacts with KW, how he interacts with Carol. You have certain moments, or like when KW steps on Carol's face, and he's like, yeah, but like Douglas did it by accident. Like you stepped on my head, but then you stepped on the face part of my head. Like there was a very realistic kid-like interaction, and there's moments of that kind of brilliance that shines through. But this would have made a kick-ass 30-minute music video.
This would have been an award-winning short film, and that's what it should have been. I can honestly say that while I was singing Jonze's praises and saying, "Oh yeah, if you're talking about the effects, this is absolutely what I'd say Jonze would be a director I would trust with this." If you came to me and you'd say, "And we need $100 million," I'd have said, "You're out of your bleeping mind. Not a chance. Come back when you have a 25-minute movie and I'll give you $20 million to make it." How about that? But, I mean, seriously, this is a movie like this is an awards play. You cannot possibly sit there and think that this is a box office play. And you can't bring in a director like Jonze and you see the two movies he's done before and you're like, this one's going to do boffo numbers.
Yeah.
That's not this guy's
going to give you
wheelhouse.
$100 million and you're going to make what, 200, 150, 120 really on this?
This is for film nerds. This is a movie for film nerds. I'm sure that there are people who are listening to this who are like, no, like you guys are heartless bastards. And like, I had a real emotional connection to it. And, I'm not discounting that at all. If you did, fantastic. I'm glad that you did. I'm glad you were able to connect on it. We just weren't able to. And when I first watched this movie, I did not like it. And I called up my buddy and I said, "You told me this was a cool movie. Why did you lie to me?" And he's like, how did he phrase it? He said, "It's a movie that shows the child experience and you hate children." That's what he said.
Oof. Okay. Your friends, okay, it might be true about you, but I'll back you up on this. I mean, I don't think, you know what? I'll tack on to what you're saying. I would not at all be surprised that this is one of those movies where there's no middle ground. You're either going to walk out and you're like, this is the best adaptation of a children's book that's ever been committed to screen. Or you're going to be me and you're going to be like, that kid's an a-hole. I don't want to spend 2 hours with him. He can go to hell. And, there's room enough for both types of people in this world.
All right. Well, keeping our podcast from turning into an over budget, over length from what it should be, let's move into final thoughts and ratings. But this has been a good discussion. I think we've given it its fair shake, its merit, where it has, especially in the visuals. But Tristan, so revisiting this, watching it twice, which is one time more than John, what are your final thoughts?
I'm giving it a 2.5. I feel like it's just the story isn't there. And if the script isn't there, if the story isn't there, if you're not engaging me for for your runtime, then that's huge knocks against you. Like, you can have these little moments of brilliance, but you can't have 5 moments of brilliance spread out across an hour and a half. And you need stuff in between. You need that connective tissue. And this movie just doesn't have it. And it's just it doesn't really feel like a cohesive story structure. It just feels like a collection of moments. And I know that some people might argue, oh, well, like that's like a kid's story, or that's like a kid telling a story, or that's like from the kid's perspective. Yeah, I'm still an adult who's watching it though. And so you have to entertain me and use basic story structure skills. And I think that's my main issue, is that it's just, you're like, oh, they're destroying the trees for 10 minutes. Oh, they're having a rock fight for 10 minutes. Oh, they're doing this for 10 minutes. Okay, we're going to listen to Karen O for a little while. Okay. And it's just that, and then bookends of the real world. Catherine Keener trying to bring home the bacon and cook that stuff too. So 2.5 for me. Mediocre.
All right. Well, John, I mean, we've been mentioning how you do see the fingerprints of Jones on this. Sometimes a director will have very strong outings and then something comes along and you're like, oh, I didn't see him anywhere. But he definitely has his prints over this.
He does.
What is your rating for Where the Wild Things Are?
It gets as generous a rating as it does, strictly because I respect the technical aspects of it. If the technical aspects were one iota less than what they are, it would be a full star lower. And I come in at a 2. Never going to watch this again. I respect what Jones was trying to do. I respect what was accomplished, but just not an enjoyable thing. 2 stars from me.
Yeah, when we announced that we were doing Spike Jonze, I was excited because I remember enjoying this movie in the theaters in 2009 and was looking forward to talking about it. But yeah, the flaws showed up a lot more on this viewing. Honestly, more for the technical aspect. I really saw the squash and stretch on the faces. It wasn't enough to pull me out, but especially for the cockatoo, I mean, he's got a beak. So literally every time they're moving the end of that beak at the corner of his mouth, you see the pixels move. It does not look like he's talking. But that is the nitpick of nitpicks. I think this is the best way to bring this story as far as the Wild Thing part. This is the best way you could possibly bring it together. You're marrying technologies that work with great voice performances and creature performances. I would never, even if they came out with a big budget CG fest, I wouldn't even go see it. I would you cannot improve on the look of this. I think that hits, but you just don't like the protagonist. And I felt more connected with Carol. I was very interested in Carol. I cared about what was happening to him, the interaction with his friends. That is what I latched onto. And Max almost disappeared. He's just, observing and going along. I was interested. Who are these? Who are Terry and Barry? Like, where are they coming from? Like that's the plot I want to see. Max is there, and then maybe go more into that kind of twist at the end where they're talking about, no, we know he's not a king, he's just a boy. It's like, you did know that? Like, what is going on? Like, what are the levels of these characters? But all that to say, I wish I could give it more, but this is a 2. It's purely for the practicality, the visuals.
How am I ranking this higher than both of you?
Because I don't give half stars. I would probably give it a 2.5 if I gave half.
You know
stars.
what? This is the Houselights where Tristan's heart grew 3 sizes that day.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I give 2.5s for mediocre films and 2 stars for bad films. And I don't think this is a bad film. It's just like,
you don't have to justify your half point.
That's my own personal ranking system.
You don't have to justify yourself to us, Tristan. We understand, we accept you the way the Wild Things accepted Max until they wanted to eat him.
Until they turned on him in a vicious way. Well, the budget's returning back to a reasonable level next week as we hit our next installment here in the House of Jones with 2013's Her here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.